Hello? Hello, Gromit? Gromit?
That is pretty good.
Gromit.
Fancy a little cheese?
Wensleydale.
Not even Wensleydale?
What's wrong with Wensleydale?
We forgot the crackers, lad. You kind of have to get some voice crack in there.
The crackers.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, you need some voice crackers.
He always sounds like he's like gonna die when he speaks. Ah.
So this means we're all doing our intros in the Wallace voice, correct?
Yes,
I'll do a Gromit voice.
I'm Wilson Lai.
That's the Gromit voice.
Yes, just to clarify.
I'm Benjamin Yap. I don't know.
And I'm Eli Sands. You got to do the hands. It helps.
Ooh, the hands.
hands.
You're listening to Deep Cut.
Cheese cut. On Deep Cut, we compare a director's most popular film with a personal favorite chosen by one of us. You do the whole episode like this.
We also discuss the director's life and career to bring context that helps us view their movies as they may want us to.
If you're enjoying the show, please remember to give us a rating or review and subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts. This will help others discover the show. You can also keep up with us at Deep Cut Pod on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Letterboxd, and Deep Cut Pod _film on TikTok. And if you want to talk about this movie with us or any other film, TV, etc., please join us on our Discord server. If you are a big fan of the show, we've also recently launched a Patreon if you want to help support us. Click the link in our description or go to deepcutpod.com to find our Patreon, Discord, and all the other socials that we've mentioned here.
So, cinephiles that we are, we always have those things in our childhood that definitely planted the seed. Like, what are those texts for you guys that started your love of movies from a young age that you only connected the dots afterwards?
We've covered it. It's the Wachowskis' The Matrix. It's really formative.
Oh.
Really formative.
I think it's different for me because I really only got deep into cinema much later in my teens, right? But I think if you're talking about childhood, there's maybe Finding Nemo was a big one, which I don't even remember when I saw that actually, but I remember really liking that. And I do remember the first movie I remember watching in my head in the theater, which is Tarzan, which I cried in. That's all I remember.
Oh.
The animated Tarzan?
Yeah. So I don't know when I saw that, but I saw it in the theater. So
And cried.
it's there in the back of my head. I want to watch movies that make me cry.
Oh.
It could be,
Yeah.
I do think there's something to that those early things that you see sort of set the mold for you on what you want to get out of what you view.
And maybe a different touchstone is that when my siblings were much younger, because they're much younger than me, they used to rewatch these movies all the time. And that movie they rewatched all the time was Ice Age, which is a dumb movie. I've basically seen that movie 50 times.
Yes. There are definitely there's some animation that I've subjected myself to like maybe 10 more times than I needed to. I owned an iPod Nano, and the only movie on
you
it...
watched movies on
Yes!
that?
Yeah.
I did too.
The screen was so small.
A blue iPod Nano.
Yeah. And the only movie I had on there for one full year was the movie... Do you know the movie Bolt? About... It was
Yes. Yeah.
Miley
People know
Cyrus.
that movie.
Yeah. So I just have seen that movie probably 20 times because I had nothing else to watch, and I put on Bolt.
I think you have told me this before.
Yeah.
For me, it was iTunes had these free pilot episodes of shows all the time. So I had this one episode of Monk that was downloaded to my iPod Nano, and I watched that so many times.
Wow.
Monk
It's with, I think, Malcolm
that's good.
McDowell plays a fashion designer.
Oh, that's
who's evil.
different. Wait, what?
It's in Monk. It's an episode of Monk.
Oh, okay. It's an episode
I think it's
of
Malcolm
Monk.
McDowell.
Okay.
Wow, that's kind of classy. Scripted TV.
Is it?
Procedural
I mean, for me,
TV.
that's TV.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know whether TV counts differently than like watching a movie. I remember watching a lot of anime as a kid, right before going to class. And I didn't know what I was watching. It was just what was on TV. And I remember two. One is Ram Mahav, which I'm watching now, the reboot. And then don't ask me what that does to how you think about gender. And then, and then this fishing anime, which I do not remember the name of. And it was all about like cool casting of your fishing line into the ocean.
Oh, that's cool.
And that somehow helps you catch fish better.
The fish are like, nice. All right. Yeah, I'll give you that one. I'll bite.
So I've always been on track to be a weeb. But anyway.
So Eli, what do your early watches inform us about how you've grown as a person and a watcher of things?
That's exactly what I've been thinking about, because today we're talking about the great claymation director Nick Park, kicking off a little mini-series on his work. Nick Park is the creator of the iconic, perfect short films Wallace and Gromit. And these are the, I believe, defining short films of my childhood. So they formed my sense of what's funny. They showed me how to read emotions between the lines. They gave me my feel for cinema and also turned my eye towards what goes into it. And also they're a real point of connection for me and my family. Rewatching them for this episode I watched with my mom and brother, and they still hold up. We were still laughing and remembering our experiences watching those movies. So similarly to what you're saying, Ben, they're kind of the full package, and they plant the seeds for what I look for in movies thereafter.
They really are Eli's sense of humor.
Yeah, I really got that.
Thank you.
Watching this.
Baked in clay, like that's it. That's Eli.
And if you believe it, which is not at all a stretch, I became obsessed with making little figurines out of clay as a kid.
You make some
including some models of Aardman characters, like the slugs from Flushed Away. So our project today is to talk about the original trilogy of Wallace and Gromit shorts. That's A Grand Day Out from 1989, The Wrong Trousers from 1993, and A Close Shave from 1995. So first, I'll give you a little background on Nick Park himself. And there's not a ton to say because he seems just like a normal, sweet British dude.
Yeah, he's not Korean.
What?
He's not Korean? Yeah,
Park. I had to process that. That was taking a while to load.
Most of the information that I have on Nick Park is coming from an interview he did in 2021 with the Children's Media Conference and a 20 Questions interview that Aardman posted in 2009. We'll post the links to both of those in the description below. So he was born Nicholas Woolston Park in 1958 in Lancashire, the United Kingdom. It seems like his parents were very supportive and had a lot of influence on his creative life. His mom was a seamstress, and she helped him make films with their home movie camera because he discovered it had a single frame button. So he was doing stop motion from an early age.
Wow.
His dad was an architectural photographer who loved to invent things. Seems a little Wallace, right? Mm-hmm. And they would make little inventions together, make movies together. And ultimately, his dad was the one who suggested he apply to a film course. And surprisingly, he never had a dog growing up.
Oh.
As a student in secondary school, he drew cartoons, and part of why he started using the camera was he wanted to give them movement, and he would animate the movement across those still frames. He had an English teacher named Mr. Kelly who asked him to show his films to the class, and he would show off his work and be encouraged by his peers and his teacher. And then at 15, one of his shorts got shown on the BBC as part of a contest for young filmmakers, I believe. So he went to Sheffield City Polytechnic to study communication arts, and then he went to the National Film and Television School. From there, he joined Aardman Animations, the studio where he does all his work, in 1985. There's a whole slate of influences he cites, and actually in a little bit, I want to give a brief rundown on the history of stop motion as a technique. But for now, just hold in mind that he really seems like a normal, friendly dad type. He says that there's in him both a bit of Wallace and some Gromit. And I think that sweetness and down-to-earth quality comes through in his work with a little bit of wackiness.
Yeah, definitely wackiness.
The other two things that I want to put on your minds before we talk about these three wonderful shorts is, one, the history of stop motion, which I want to divide into two categories: action and emotion. From the action vein of it, the earliest known use of what became stop motion would be the stop trick. And this is when a shot is going and it stops, and then something changes behind the scenes. And when the film continues, it looks like it's continuous. Something has appeared, something has changed suddenly.
Right.
This is a very George Méliès technique starting in the mid 1890s. Think of that classic shot from Journey to the Moon, 1902, when the spaceship suddenly appears and lands in the moon's eye. That's a stop trick. This gets picked up by Edison notoriously in the short film Execution of Mary Stuart from 1895, which depicts the decapitation of Mary Queen of Scots, which apparently caused some hubbub. But it uses a stop trick to remove her head. Whoops. The terminology moves more towards stop action, which is a term coined by Helena Smith Dayton, who made a clay figurine reenactment of Romeo and Juliet in 1917, an early pioneer of what becomes figurine stop motion.
Ooh, cool.
Also in this trajectory of action, there's Willis O'Brien, who's the animator of the 1933 original King Kong, and Ray Harryhausen. These are very flashy instances of stop motion. They're in the novelty phase of the technique, where it's a big draw just to see this technique in action and being utilized and being combined and composited with actual human actors, especially in the case of Ray Harryhausen. Think of Jason and the Argonauts, the skeleton fight. On the emotions side, it's more a British thing. Stop motion gets used in these endearing, sweet ways. There's Charlie Bauer, who's an influence on Park, who has this early clay stop motion short called It's a Bird in 1930, which is just a sweet, it's literally what it sounds like. It's a bird.
Okay.
And then there's Cosgrove and Hall, who are the animators behind the long-lasting British children's show called Postman Pat, which is clay animation as well. And it's,
that rings a bell. Yeah, I know Postman Pat.
Yeah, man. I can hear it in my head.
All three of us are from former British colonies.
Oh,
so we love our Postman Pat.
You can say that to anyone and probably be right.
The last thing that I want to put on your minds is the word animate, which I was thinking about. One of the great strengths of Park's filmmaking is his ability to take clay, this material that biblically we are drawn from. We are formed from the earth. And Park gives it life. The word anima in Latin is life or soul, and the verb animare means give breath to. And to me, the most important part of Park's filmmaking is this, that he takes these inanimate, silent objects and he really gives them expression and personality. That's the thing I come away from these rewatches valuing the most. And it's what I cherish so much, that there's so much life in these.
There really is. I really found a lot of joy getting to know these characters through these three shorts. I have a cultural knowledge of Wallace and Gromit, but I don't think that I've prior to this, I don't think I've seen like scenes of this show before or these
Like
shorts.
any of it? Like,
no, like I've maybe
the
seen
movie?
like brief seconds of something, but I've not
Oh.
seen anything. So I think it was really, it was like a lovely, lovely introduction, and like I feel like I grew to love these characters through the course of watching these shorts over a few days. So I'm very glad that this has like entered my life as just like characters.
Yeah.
You had encountered it earlier, Ben?
I've seen Curse of the Were-Rabbit. I just haven't seen these shorts. I know the context of like maybe the cheese, the rocket ship, and like the train track scene. So I like know a bit of that. But I had seen Curse of the Were-Rabbit, which I like. And I also really like stop motion, generally speaking. Like I remember, maybe not childhood touchstone, but like those other stop motion films like Nightmare Before Christmas. Nightmare? Is it correct? Nightmare Before Christmas, that's the one. Coraline, like I really love those. The Leica films, I remember really liking.
The Leica ones.
Although I want to talk about that a little bit as well. Yeah, so I've always really liked stop motion and like puppetry, which is also kind of related in a sense, a little different, but also like turning inanimate things and giving them life. I always love that.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad to kind of get to know Wallace and Gromit better by like digging deeper into like their history. Essentially, like this is like where they came from.
There's something about stop motion and also I would say puppetry that's elementally closer to the foundational building block of cinema, which is that this is a series of still images that strung together give the illusion of movement. It's like so constantly reminding you of that in almost a Brechtian kind of way. You know it's an illusion, but it's so convincing.
But, like, exactly. Like it's interesting because I think in the end of the day, like these like puppetry and stop motion prove to you that we like stories. Like we don't care if it's real or not, right? We know it's not real. If you were like, yeah, it's obviously just clay, and I'm like, yeah, I know that, but like his face doesn't look human. Like he has a weird shaped head, right?
Gromit's eyebrows, they carry so much emotion.
But I want to believe that this thing has a story. It's like, you know, there's this thing that people say, like if you were to like take like a piece of paper and then you're like, oh, this is Steve, and then you tear it in two. People are like, oh my god, Steve. You know what I mean?
Don't do that.
Yeah. So it's this kind of thing, like even without a face, like you kind of really like stories. And I think humans are drawn to stories about things with life. Like you think about Gromit he's a dog, but he also acts like a human. So he's more human-like than dog-like.
Yeah.
And so that makes him more endearing to us, you know? And then you think about Japanese, like, I think they call it kemono, which is like turning inanimate objects or animals into like anime figures and like characters. Like they do this all the time, like turning them into human characters, right? Because that endears you to them. Even with film, like film also has that illusion, right? You know what you're watching is like a bunch of actors. But I think stop motion especially makes it very clear that these are not real, much more so. But all they're doing is trying to erase that barrier between reality and belief. Yeah.
Is the goal to erase the barrier?
I think so. Like, not to erase it, but to smudge it. Even though it's impossible to erase.
I like that.
Right? Like, it's impossible. Right? But I'm just smudging it so that you get to the point that you believe it. And that's the trick, right? Like, even with films, live action, good acting is doing that exact same thing.
Yeah, you're like, oh wow, they're like acting really well in the scene. Like you have that thought in your head, and that by acknowledging that, you're like, oh, this is like a farce. This is not real. But still, you're invested. I feel like it's the same thing in these shorts. Like you see, I kept on like looking at like fingerprint marks on these claymation figures, and I found that like, I mean, maybe you could say that it takes you out of it, but I found it like very endearing and like lovely that there was like, because I think there's the presence of these characters, right? But then I think there's an added thing where when thinking about the presence of a creator, I don't know if this is like religious. It's not religious. It's not religious. But like when we think about directorial hand, right? It's a similar kind of thing.
Like literal.
But this is like
literal.
It's literally the hand.
It's literally the hand. So yeah, I really found it to be really lovely. It was great.
I'm so glad. Well, let's talk about each of these one by one. And I just really want to hear what jumped out to you guys
Are we
here.
ranking them? Is that how
Yeah,
we
let's
start?
rank them.
I have my ranking.
I have my ranking.
Should we do
I have
that
my
first or last?
I think first, because ultimately they're all great and it
Yes.
doesn't matter.
Yes.
Okay, just favorite. Let's just do favorite. There's only 3 of them that we're talking
Yeah.
about today. Who's gonna go first? Oh, we do it at the same time. Let's see what happens.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's do it at the
see.
same time.
Okay. 3, 2,
2,
1.
1.
A close
Wrong trousers.
shave. Oh.
Oh.
Oh. For a long time I would have said a close shave, but this one
Interesting.
usurped it for me.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That railroad track sequence is so good though in Wrong Trousers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think anyone would have said A Grand Day Out, unfortunately.
I don't really like it. Like, in fact, I actually like A Grand Day Out more. than
What?
Close Shave.
I think
Oh,
the comedic
interesting.
I think the hot take, maybe a hot take. I think the comedic timing is so off in A Grand Day Out. I'm like, you're really like, we're going through like beats here. Like it's slow.
Let's talk about this.
Okay.
Let's talk about this.
Let's start with A Grand Day Out then. Let's start with A Grand Day
Let's
Out.
shall.
Yeah.
This is a perfect segue. So in A Grand Day Out, we meet Wallace, who's a chipper, British middle-aged guy with big cheeks, and his silently astute canine companion, Gromit. When they're planning a vacation, they decide to go to the moon and try out its cheese. So, of course, they build a rocket, blast off, and have a picnic on the moon. They invoke the wrath of a square, rectangle-looking robot who polices the moon but dreams of skiing. And they have to race their way back home in order to flee the robot's clutches. So what Wilson's saying about the pacing is correct. It starts off as a very mundane slice of British life. Like, yes, the dog is sitting up and reading the paper and whatnot, but it seems very mundane. The joke, like the flip turn of it, is that all of a sudden they're building a rocket in their basement. And that is what Parks says was the initial idea. He says the initial joke was, quote, guy who builds a rocket in his basement, unquote. And he started working on it when he was in National Film and Television School. So this is effectively a student film.
Wow.
But
An
it's
incredible
also, to
one.
me, existing squarely in the novelty phase of the technique. I agree with you, Wilson, that the pacing is slow, especially as they're warming up to get ready to go on their trip. But it's also delighting in those small details of
Yes.
like when Gromit welds, there are sparks.
Yes.
When Gromit turns the drill and he goes spinning around, there's motion blur as he turns. There are these things that make you go, how did they do that? And also just these one-off clever jokes.
Yeah. Like, I think if you compare the 3, Grand Day Out barely has a story. Like, they
Right.
all have villains in a sense, but the villain for A Grand Day Out is introduced much later in the story.
In fact, you go to his subjectivity
Yeah.
more than Wallace and Gromit in the end.
And he's just like kind of there, the robot. He's just kind of like there and doing his own thing. So it's a bit different in way to storytelling. So in the end, and I think this is carries through all of them, which is that all of them are really not mostly, all of them delight in the small details.
yes.
Right? And it's like the funny little gag that is meaningless to the grand scheme of it. And A Grand Day Out just happens to have more of that because that's the whole point of it. And
But it also is not tossing them off as quickly as the other two do.
Yeah.
It's lingering on each one.
It does really linger.
the thing about pacing that Wilson's asking about, because I wrote this down just this morning, which is like thinking about this as British humor, because because we talked about the differences between British and American humor, and I think these are so British.
They are so
And
British.
Why are they British? I don't know how to explain it, but I'm gonna like give some thoughts, which is like, I think the pacing's off because British humor tends to be very dry sometimes and very patient. So I think when I think about American humor, I think more about slapstick and screwball, where it's trying to heighten the insanity of things so that you get a big belly laugh, like you have a huge punchline. British humor
Right.
is a bit more like it's like a chuckle fest.
So that makes me think of the moment when, as the rocket is blasting off, there's that crowd of mice in the basement.
Okay,
and
yeah,
there's a
yeah.
shot of them looking, there's a shot of the rocket, and then as the spark lights, all the mice put on sunglasses.
Yes.
It's not a huge belly laugh, but it's like a thing that happens
Yeah.
that prompts that kind of chuckling. Then I agree.
I think it's a lot of it is just like, oh, here's something that's like I find it kind of funny. Like Look at this.
To me,
you know what I mean?
That comes from one of the influences that Park cites, which is Terry Gilliam's animations from Monty Python, which are really weirdo and bizarre and perhaps a little bit bigger in their absurdity, but they are also kind of showing you a weird thing and saying, funny, innit?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite gags in this film, and I think in the Wrong Trousers, is the books that Gromit reads.
Yes.
You know, like they're so random. And then like Electronics for Dogs is in itself like, okay. But I love
phones.
Pluto's Republic.
Yes.
Which is just like, oh, okay. And it's not like a big joke. It's just like, this is a dog. And so this is a dog book. It's like, okay. And so I really like that kind of stuff. Like, it's just kind of dumb. And like, I'm like, all right.
I didn't get any of those because all of those book titles were superimposed in German.
Oh, no.
Because I watched a German rip.
You were watching a
this.
German rip.
Yeah.
Rip.
Dude, why?
Indeed. Why did you do that?
It's the only one I could source, or the one that was like easiest to source for me. Yeah.
Die Technohosa.
Die Technohosa.
Anyway, I think within all three shorts, like you think about the different kinds of jokes, and for Park, I think more of them tend to be jokes in which you can anticipate the punchline, and so when it happens, it's like, huh, like I kind of knew that was going to happen. It's like, huh. And so it's not really trying to surprise you all the time, but he does have moments of that where he switches up the whether you anticipate or whether you don't know what's going to happen. Sometimes he'll be like, think about how I'm going to solve this problem later, and then we'll see that. You know, especially with Gromit, where like he's setting up things, and he's actually really good at this. Like he's setting up stuff in the early parts that will pay off later in little jokes or like some dumb thing that happens.
Yeah,
because you already know how this thing works.
Yeah.
Like
I think through the years, you see, you really see Park figuring out, I guess, the format of like a 30-minute short and like how to tell a story with comfortable pacing and like setting things up and paying them off at the end. Because I think by the time we get to a close shave, I think it's very clean, and it's also like he's working with more characters there, and you sort of are able to track character growth, and there's like an arc for every single character in a close shave, right? Like you can really think about where everyone's starting and where everyone's ending up. Whereas with a Grand Day Out, I guess even like the evil robot on the moon, you have an arc there in that 15 minutes or 10 minutes that you see them. So maybe, but I think it's just like, for me, it was like every moment. Like I was not even thinking like in a grand scheme of like the pacing of the whole thing, but like every scene, I was like, oh, we're like taking our time. We're like enjoying the stop motionness of it, which is great. But I think I liked when things started happening quicker in the next two.
I think I really like the robot. Like the robot's really
so good.
I think it's because he doesn't have a face, and that's why I find him more charming. You know.
The movements of its arms are so expressive.
And its hands, like it's a big Mickey Mouse hands.
Yes.
Yeah. I love when he was like taking stuff out of his drawer and then realizing that one circle that I thought was a broken button was his eye was really kind of a nice surprise. Right. Yeah. And then he does those POV shots where he turns like the POV of the robot is a circle. Yeah, which is like kind of a nice little thing. There's also the gag with the baton that he's about to hit Wallace, who then, stands up into it anyway. Yeah.
It's so British, right? Like cop stuff. That's so British.
That's
right?
so true. And also, there's also like the super glue thing, which is like, all right.
He glues the moon back together.
Yeah, like what's going on?
Wallace is taking the cheese.
Like, what is this robot doing on the moon? And why did Wallace put 10p in it? Like, why?
I think it seems very British.
Is the robot modeled after something that like existed in British society, like some kind of like?
I don't know.
You're gonna need an anthropologist to answer that one.
I don't know.
Don't make sense.
Like, is this about colonialism? Like, is this about British colonialism and imperialism?
It's about cheese.
I mean, like, yes, it can be about cheese. It can be about cheese, but they're going to another land and they're. Yes, they're expanding. They're like, oh, I'm going to live my life here as I would live it down there. Yeah, sorry. Those are my 2 cents.
Wilson, I think there's something totally to this.
Okay, thank
it's like
you.
Grande Out is colonialism. The Wrong Trousers is British domestic tax policy.
Oh.
And Thatcherism.
Yeah.
And a close shave is industry.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. Okay, but you think about
These
it.
are
This
interesting.
man spends like 2 to 3 years making this movie. I'm sure there's like, it's not just about cheese. Like he's been thinking about this for like 600, 700 days at least. Well, it's not just about cheese. Okay, thank you. Thank you for hearing me out. Thank you.
I'm with you.
Thank you, Eli. For
There's gotta be something to it.
Thank you.
I'll entertain this, but I do not agree yet. Okay, I just don't see it yet. I'm like, all right, it's about cheese.
We'll get there. So before we pivot to The Wrong Trousers, I do want to let you know that initially Gromit was supposed to have a voice, but it was too challenging to move his mouth and be too expensive. So he realized that a silent Gromit opposite Wallace's chatteriness would be a good opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And also initially Gromit was supposed to be a cat.
Oh my
What?
gosh.
That would be so
Or was
strange.
going to be a cat.
That's actually-
and then he changed.
Yeah, it's because he doesn't have a dog.
Yeah, true. He doesn't know the difference.
Yeah, I was thinking about the pair, like the talkative character and the quiet character, which is
Yeah.
a archetype that you see in many, many, many media properties. And I say media
Yes.
properties because
Yes.
it's like, think about stand-up acts, like 2-person stand-up acts, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like even like Penn and Teller is like that. Phineas and Ferb is like that. Who else we got?
yeah.
Who else we got?
Ooh.
Oh, SpongeBob and Snail,
Yeah.
which is exactly this
Meow.
domesticated pet in his house. That's
Are
his
we
friend.
saying that this is the blueprint? Is this the actual blueprint?
I don't know whether it's the blueprint, but it's just part of a series of like this type of thing. And I think this paired archetype is very, very common. And I'm sure if somebody were to do the research, like if you are in film school right now, you need a dissertation topic, you can go do this.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
Like, go for it.
Three Stooges, one of them was silent,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Like I think the Groucho brothers, one of them was quiet, if I'm not wrong. Like if you think about
No, I think they all
the
talked.
Marx
Just one was
brothers.
Italian.
I know, but like Groucho talks a lot and then
I mean, he,
No,
he
no.
pretended to be Italian. Not...
Groucho talks a lot and Harpo doesn't speak, if I'm not wrong.
Oh, I think you're right.
Yeah.
But then Chico is the one who pretends to be Italian.
I
Yes.
can't remember. Anyway, yeah.
But I think, okay, speaking about Wallace and Gromit specifically, I really like that Wallace is the speaking one, but he's obviously the stupider one. And Gromit is the smart
Yeah.
one, but he's like the non-speaking pet. Like, I think that's so fucking smart. I think that's so smart. And it's
Yeah.
so funny. It's like the smart
It's so
one, he
funny.
can't voice his like ideas or opinions, which are always like almost correct all the time. And he just
He's
has
always
to
saving the day.
yeah, he just has to suffer through
He's
Wallace.
side-eyed
Yeah.
the whole
Yes.
short.
Yes.
The whole show, he's just like, oh my god, this fucking guy. that's his face the whole time.
It's in the eyebrows.
Yeah, the eyebrows is so good. Yeah.
It's perfect. That space above his eyes, that little ridge of clay just gets so much across to the viewer.
Yep.
The eye rolls, the like one eyebrow lifted. It's so perfect.
Ah.
In The Wrong Trousers, Wallace blows all his savings on the Techno Trousers, which are a lackluster birthday gift for Gromit to take him on so-called walkies. To make up the money, Wallace rents out a room in their house to a conniving penguin who turns out to be the notorious thief Feathers McGraw. It's up to Gromit to save Wallace from becoming an accomplice to a daring museum jewel heist.
Hmm.
This is Nick Park's favorite, he says.
Oh, it's so good
It's great.
because the penguin is so funny.
Dude, I hate that
So
penguin.
funny.
I hate that penguin so
Yeah.
much. As soon as he
He's so
stepped onto
good.
the scene, I'm like, you're bad news. When you have like characters that like don't have whites in their eyes, that's immediately for me. I'm like, oh, I don't trust you.
This is my favorite partially because of what you noticed, Ben, which is that the setup and payoff in this is immaculate. In the beginning, there's the train, there's the jam machine, there's the bed mechanism, there's the doggy door. There's all these things that get set up and then pay off, especially during the bravura train chase at the
Mhm.
end. it's so perfectly constructed, and it moves at such a clip that every joke and heartfelt beat just snowballs together across the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
When Gromit cries, it's a legit heartbreaker.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And he leaves with his little sack.
Poor dude really goes through it. He really goes through it in this one.
He does. It's kind of the one that just is a perfect short.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a perfect contraption, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think all the payoff and stuff, like there's the jam part, which
Oh my God.
happens perfectly well at the start, and then after that it hits him in the face later on.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's a perfect example of the British type of humor that you were mentioning as well, because the grammar of that is Gromit arrives in the chair from the bed up above. He looks over at the toaster, and the toaster springs but with no toast to pop up. Back to Gromit, his eyes look over at the jam machine, and then the jam hits him in the face. And just like the movement of his eyes across those cuts is so funny.
So good.
So it's like you know he's gonna get hit by the jam. It's not a surprise at all, but you're like waiting for it to happen because you're like, I want to see him get hit in the face with jam. Right? Yeah. So I think that's a bit of a mean streak sometimes with British humor. It's like I want to see the characters go through it.
Yeah.
And there's so many moments. Like for me, my favorite scene is the heist scene. It's such a good heist scene.
So good.
Oh my God, it's so good. Because there's also like, okay, what is the freaking penguin doing? Right? Like, what's he doing? Like, what's the plan here? Like, what's he trying to do? And Gromit's watching him, and then he's doing that whole measuring tape thing, which is also so good. Like, what's he doing to measuring tape? Oh, this is how he grapple hooks up to the window. Cool. And then measuring the window, you're like, okay, what's in the window? You don't know. And then after that, he goes to the heist. It's the kind of heist where there are two types of heist scenes. Heist scenes when you know the plan beforehand and everything goes south, and where you don't know the plan and you're watching it unfold. Okay? And so this is the second type of heist scene. And so you're like, okay, what does the trousers have to do with this whole plan? Like, you don't even know he's stealing anything. You just know that he's doing something. And then you're just watching Wallace slowly walk into this museum or whatever it is. And you're like, what's the plan here? And then he like walks all the way past the window. You're like, okay, where's he going? And then you see the entryway. You start seeing the laid out plans. You're like, okay, he has a very direct path towards whatever the object of his desire is, which is this diamond. And then he wears the helmet at the start, and you're like, oh wow, he cares for Wallace's health and safety. No, he doesn't. That's how he gets the diamond. I was like, oh. And then the whole time he's got like beads of sweat just going down his face. Oh, it's so good. And then there's the moment where like, you know, the ceiling boards start peeling, and you know that's gonna pay off. Yeah. And then he managed to get past. And actually, my favorite part of it, which is like very small, is like at the end, you're like, how does he get out? And the whole time I was like, okay, then the window. Is he going to break the window? What's he going to do with the window? Because it's the one part of the plan that he doesn't set up. And so he keeps walking to the window, and then he just stands, and you're like, what is going on? And then you realize it's a flippy window, and then he just flips over. And that's it. I was like, oh, so easy.
This is the thing about Nick Park's action, is that it's full of these quick reversals in the train chase, in the heist, and in a close shave in the sheep chase and the dog food plant action sequence. It's constantly going back and forth who's in control and who's winning, and it flips in these really funny and quick ways.
Yeah. What I really loved about the wrong trousers is that it like, I think it really like questioned that like central relationship between Wallace and Gromit, right? You like it brought up, I guess, ideas about like ownership or individuality, and like I thought it was really cool that that's the direction that Park was choosing to take for like the second iteration of this Wallace and Gromit series. And I really felt for Gromit like that whole time. Like I think Wallace is kind of like mean and like
ungrateful.
Yeah, ungrateful. And like they are like roommates, but he is also a dog owner. I think he acts like a dog owner. Like, or not like your dog won't make breakfast for you, but yeah, he has that sort of like servant master kind of thing, which also felt very
hot take time,
imperialist.
Guys.
Yes.
Hot take time. Wallace and Gromit is queer coded. Especially in the wrong trousers.
I mean, maybe, yeah. I can see it. I can see it.
Like, kind of. Because they kind of act like an old married couple. A lot of the times, they act like an old married couple. And then, Gromit's a dude, but like he's like knitting, so he's kind of like feminized a bit.
Yes. Yes.
There's something going on here that's like kind of interesting. It's kind of like a Bert and Ernie situation where they're like roommates.
Yes.
I don't know.
And they were roommates.
Oh my God, they were roommates.
Ah!
Yeah, so I don't know. I googled this. I was like, has anybody ever said this? And people have said this.
Okay.
Like in corners of the
on
internet. On the internet. People have expressed this argument. And I'm like, interesting.
I bet if you searched it up, there's some shit about the imperialism, though.
I think there's something about the nature of the techno trousers as a birthday gift that is revealing.
Mm-hmm.
Like Wallace is so focused on his latest technical obsession that he winds up giving Gromit a gift that makes them spend less time together. A walk is a typical point of bonding between a human and a dog. So he winds up driving a stake between them and then inviting the penguin in to solve the problem of the money, which boots Gromit out of his room and drives a wedge between them. I do think those questions about what is owed between a human and a dog, or any two people who are in any kind of relationship to each other, are very much part of the text here.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, Gromit takes care of Wallace and not the other way around, which is like kind of funny. Yeah. And then Gromit does all the work, like all the time. Even though Wallace is the so-called inventor, Gromit does everything. Yeah. All the labor almost.
I guess that's like the part of like that like sort of nice, like nasty part of British humor where you're like, that's how it is.
But I think it's important because like if they're too nice to each other, then like it doesn't have this biting point of like, oh my God, Wallace is such an idiot.
Right.
And then it's not like, oh, I love Gromit, because Gromit just nice and like he does everything.
Yeah. But I think Wallace gets away with it because he's an idiot. Like he gets away with so much because he's an idiot. And that kind of pisses me off. It pisses me off.
And I think what I'm saying is that it's good that it pisses you off in that it endears you to Gromit way more.
Yes. Yes.
The emotion of being pissed off at Wallace also endears him as a character.
Yes.
That's like, Wallace is a fucking idiot, and I'm going to tell everybody this.
Yes.
He's like my annoying friend I'm going to tell you about.
Yeah.
But because of that, he feels more real. And like, I'm talking about a clay figure right now.
Yeah.
Imbued with being a freaking idiot. You know what I mean? Like, and I find that very fascinating. I think it's that shamelessness to make his characters like extremes. You know what I mean? Or like not even extremes, but like very iconic in that sense, like pushing the envelope, like where they're like not just like best friends. They're best friends who fight. Oh my God, this is best friend cinema.
Oh, it is.
Ding, ding, ding.
It's best friend cinema.
Ding, ding, ding to my head. All right.
Maybe if we're extending this idea of it as some kind of social commentary, there's a little bit of criticism or satire of complacency of classic British man.
Yes,
that's
true.
There.
Definitely. That's there.
Definitely.
Also, where did this British museum get the diamond from?
Oh!
That's what I want to know.
Colonialism.
There we go.
The penguins Robin Hood. There's like an exhibit of penguins in the museum.
There is, yeah.
And they're like early man.
True.
Wow.
I was like,
another Aardman film.
Yeah.
Feathers McGraw, actually a hero.
we were watching.
I can't wait for this. Can't wait for this sequel, dude. He's coming. He's in the next movie.
Oh, what?
He is coming out in December.
Oh, lit. I'm so excited.
It's the return of Feathers McGraw.
Oh my God, I hope I get to see it in theaters. That'd be so fun.
I'm sure you will, man. I remember watching Were Rabbit.
Are they doing a theatrical release?
I don't see why they wouldn't.
79 minutes.
Ooh,
oh my God.
It's a feature.
Here we go.
Whoa.
Here we go.
It's being released by Netflix, though, so it probably is not going to have.
Oh, it's a TV release. BBC One. All right.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Wait, what do I need to watch before this feature? Are we going to be covering it, or do I have to like see? I have to watch the Were-Rabbit though. Curse of the Were-Rabbit.
We're gonna watch Were-Rabbit.
Oh, we will.
Right?
We will.
I think it's worth watching Were-Rabbit to see how the Wallace and Gromit format extends over to a feature length. And I think Were-Rabbit is entirely successful.
Right.
I love that movie.
That's a good movie.
And also there's another short, a Matt A Matter of Loaf and Death.
Okay. I will catch those.
Which is also really
I want to
good.
watch.
Wait, did they even like make this didn't become a TV show? For some reason this in my head like this was a TV show.
There
This is
was
not
a TV show actually. There was a TV show, but it was not directed by Nick Parker.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Copy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was like I'm not sure if it was even completely claymation. I'm not sure. It was about inventions. And like,
cracking contraptions.
yeah.
It was like web shorts, like 5 minutes
I
here
see.
and there.
It's just because claymation is so difficult.
Yeah, like you're
You
seeing
know?
like this guy spending
Yeah.
like years on this 30 minutes short. I'm like, wow. It's tough work.
Shit's so hard.
It's tough work.
Like imagine you do this and then nobody likes your movie, then what happens? Like it's crazy.
Do something else.
Yeah. I guess that means you're bad at it, but yeah.
Before we move on from The Wrong Trousers, we have to talk about the train chase.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God. The best sequence in all of Wallace and Gromit.
Yes.
Everything pays off.
I need to figure out
know.
how they do that motion blur thing. Like how does that work? How are they doing that?
I have no clue.
I'm like so confused.
How do they do things flying through the air?
Yes. Like how do they do real life elements plus stop motion that is also moving, but the real life elements also look like they're moving at a regular speed?
Or things moving at different speeds in the same shot.
Yes.
Like the bullets.
Yes.
and It's crazy.
I mean, different speeds in the same shot. I guess you would just have to. Okay, my brain's not working. I can't think of it.
You just have to plan it out very precisely, but it is
Yeah.
so precisely planned out.
I think the big thing I'm
And-
thinking about is like a lot of stop motion stuff now uses a lot of digital intermediates to remove
Yes.
arms and stuff of floating objects. But I'm like, did he do that then? Because that's way more expensive to do a DI with film. Also, these are shot on film. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
What I wonder is if there are poles going out the back of airborne objects to attach them to the set behind them. But then how do you light that?
Yeah, without casting a
casting a
shadow.
shadow.
That's true.
He must have done a little bit of DI work because think about in Grande Out when we do the dream sequence for the robot, that cannot be stop motion when he does the static. Right.
Okay. Yeah,
so
yeah,
there
yeah.
must have been some sort of digital intermediate. So I think it's
In 1989, though?
I don't know. Possible. It's not impossible. It's not impossible. Star Wars.
Yeah.
Star Wars is the DI, and that was like 70s, 60s.
But that was like very careful cutting out of
Yeah.
the celluloid to composite objects in, I believe, right?
Maybe
I
that's
don't
what he's doing. He's
know if
cutting out
that's
the
true.
celluloid.
Yeah. Some of the gun flashes might be like imposed, but yeah. But I really love the matchstick with the fire.
Yeah.
Grande Out, which is
Yeah.
really nice.
Yeah.
But then when Gromit, again, uses the welder, those are real sparks coming off of it.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
How does he
You
do
gotta
it?
call Nick Park.
Yeah, we should.
How you do it?
Nick,
Yeah.
answer us.
I'm looking at this gunfight right now, and I'm like, some of these bullets are imposed and probably like printed onto the film at least. You know, something like that. But sometimes they're not objects; they're just like flashes of light. So I think you can do that. The sparks, I'm not sure. I can't really think about it right now. Like I'm thinking a lot about like airborne objects. Like did he do arms? Because cleaning those out is a pain in the butt. You know what I mean? Like too expensive. Maybe it's just a lot of smart ideas of like where to put things so that you can have airborne objects.
It's also that it's so packed with ideas that it moves by faster than you can really hang on to any one of detail and even have time to think, how did they do that?
Yeah.
You're just keeping up. And
Yeah.
again, all those reversals. There's the penguin landing on the train, then Gromit lands on the train after being shot down from the lamp, and then the lamp is his helmet, which protects him from the bullets, and then there's the doggy door, and Gromit switches the track. It's all these things one after another so quickly, and the way it all ends with Gromit holding the bottle that catches the penguin, which is already bottle shaped.
Yes.
It's perfect.
It's really perfect.
I'm thinking now, like I'm thinking about the train robbery, and I forgot to mention my favorite part of the train robbery is that he pulls out a fucking gun. Because I remember in a Grande
From
Out,
where?
in Grande Out, when the robot takes out the baton, I was like, is he gonna pull out a gun? And then I was like, oh, it's just a baton. And then in this one, he pulls out a gun. I was like, oh my god, he's got a gun.
Feathers McGraw takes no
that
prisoners.
Yeah. And then I'm realizing it right now, like the reason Wrong Trousers is like such a crazy contraption is because it pulls from so many genres in 30 minutes. Because this is a Western train robbery sequence.
Yeah.
Within a kind of romantic melodrama when he's like running away.
Yeah.
Stilted lover. You got heist film, little noir. You know what I mean? Like so much going on in 30 minutes, pulling from so many references, and then you don't even realize it because it's so seamless that he's just doing it. And because the references help you understand the scene, it's also an economy of storytelling using the genre. You're like, oh, now it's a chase sequence.
Yeah.
You know? And like, that's just like amazing. The amount of information he's packed into 30 minutes.
Agreed. That's perfectly said, Ben. I love that.
Dude, this penguin with a gun. I think it should be it's like a good GIF. It's like a good reaction GIF.
Gromit standing behind him with the rolling pin, and then like Gromit's like coming to save the day, and then boom, penguin has a gun. Gromit instantly drops the rolling pin, hands up.
Yeah.
There's this line in The Wrong Trousers when they're stuck in a cabinet, and Gromit has hotwired the techno trousers to start stomping to free them from this cabinet. And Wallace says, "There goes me naughty pine." And when I was a kid, I thought there was some bigger joke to that my parents were laughing at. But no, it's just funny. It's just like he's bemoaning the destruction of his cabinet.
He also says, "Watch where you're poking around there, Gromit." When he's hot wiring his crotch. I don't know. Back to my previous point.
Queer-coded.
I love Wrong Trousers. It's just fun. It's a delight.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Last thing, that all the sounds in The Wrong Trousers are totally baked into my brain. The sound of the techno trousers, the jewel heist alarm, and the ting of the diamond being caught. It's all perfectly recognizable sound.
Sound design Eli also from here. I mean, all stop motion, all sound is fake. Right? That's the crazy thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's time for close shave.
Close shave. Okay. Wallace and Gromit have taken up window washing, which places them squarely within the clutches of the evil sheep rustler Preston, who is a dog, and Wendeline, Wallace's doppelganger and love interest. A small and clever sheep named Sean, escapes the rustlers and bands together with Wallace and Gromit to save Gromit from being framed and stop Preston's dastardly scheme.
Oh.
Wilson, why is this one your favorite?
I'm a simple man, you know. I'm a very simple man. I see a cute sheep being smart, and I am immediately won over. I think Sean the sheep is one of the greatest characters ever made in like the world. I don't know. I think there's just really something very cute about this sheep that wants to like exist, and existing includes like eating everything and becoming ungovernable. I think it's perfect. I think he's so cute. And I just wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting it at all. And then I saw him and I'm like, oh my God, that's Sean the sheep. He was so excited. Okay, but also, in addition to that, I think it all has like very great setups and payoffs. And I love all the different characters in this. And I think the chase sequences are great. I think the motorcycle sequence is fantastic when all the sheep form this sort of stand there on the motorcycle. I thought that was so...
Get yourselves organized.
It was fantastic. And then at the end, it sort of became very like I love Terminator. So like I think that it turned into like when everyone was running away from like the crusher, the meat grinder, and it was like the robot that gets crushed. It's great. That's like classic like James Cameron. I'll be back. Like it predates James Cameron. I'll be back actually. So maybe he watched that and then made this. Okay. Maybe not. Terminator.
Does it?
Okay, 1984. Never mind. The first Terminator is 1984.
Oh, okay.
So so Nick Park is probably taking from that. But just a lot of fun, and I think by this point, I really get it. Like, I understand. I think there was sort of a compiled nature to me watching these short films where the more that I watched, the more I understood and the more I bought into this whole thing. So by the last one, I was like, oh, yeah, that's my shit. Like, you are my guys. Yeah, great.
That makes sense. Yeah.
The escalation of danger between the three shorts is pretty interesting. Like the first one is like kind of tame in terms of the villain. Then the second one's like, okay, the villain's got a fucking gun. And then the third one's like, this guy's a mass murderer. Like, what's going on? Like, what? I was like, what? Because at first you're like, oh, I was very confused when Gromit was on trial for murder. I was like, who is he killing? Supposedly. Until they were like revealing that Preston's making dog food out of sheep. I was like, oh,
nasty.
that's really dark.
That's bad.
That's really dark.
That's bad.
And he's got a contraption to do mass murder in his basement. I was like, huh?
Shades of Chicken Run.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Chicken Run, also great movie.
Yeah.
I've seen it a bunch of
Great movie.
times. Yeah. So there's this like escalation of like kind of like getting crazier with the content that's happening. I think my only reservation about A Close Shave is that there's maybe too much going on, like too much world building for 30 minutes.
I think that it ramps up very quickly, and the payoff is pretty much the entire second half of the short, which is great. I think it works superbly from there. I didn't fully buy the romance this time around, which is fine. It's cheeky about it.
Yeah.
This is a technical question.
Go ahead.
Or it's not a technical question. It's a logistical question. So there's that machine, right? Where like Gromit goes in and they like shave him. Like how do they use that on Gromit to make sweaters? Like why was that in Wallace's room at the first place? Like he was not shaving a dog to make a sweater.
I don't think he was doing that.
I think he was just washing him in it, and then they accidentally turn on the Knit-O-Matic, which
they're separate
is
machines.
also there.
Oh,
No,
I think so.
I think it's the same machine with two functions, and then he's just like using his Knit-O-Matic to wash Gromit, but it also can shave sheep.
Just because.
Okay,
Just 'cause.
that's what I was wondering.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay,
Yeah.
Cool. I would love that. I would love that machine.
Also, Crime and Punishment, Fido Dostoevsky.
Dostoevsky.
So stupid. It feels like all the energy went to like making things bigger but less dense, which is what I love about Wrong Trousers. Like there's like big ideas here. Like the Knit-O-Matic's so cool. That grinding thing is really interesting. There's like bigger sets. Like that chase sequence is a bigger set as well. Like you've got a city set essentially. You have the window shop. Right. So there's like a lot of bigger ideas. Like the city is now bigger, but it's less fun because it's just less dense. You know what this is?
I agree.
You know what this is?
What?
This is a difference between Mad Max Fury Road and Mad Max Furiosa.
Oh.
Like it's like the same feel. It's like Mad Max Fury Road is like jam-packed. All that shit's in there. You got a goddamn good chase sequence.
Yeah.
This one's like, let's do world building. Let's add characters. Let's tell you more about the world. You know? It kind of like feels a bit saggy in that sense. Like there's like too much here. It's like I just want to watch them do funny stuff.
But when it does get to the action climax,
It's fun.
Yeah.
Like the reveal that he's a robot. Like what the fuck?
Yeah, that's kind of left
I
field.
was like, what?
This is also the one where Wallace finally saves Gromit, which I like.
Oh.
It feels like a good
From
payoff. for
That's
the
true.
setup.
I didn't even think about that.
Like if you're thinking about this as like a trilogy, right? You like they are following each other.
Yeah.
It's a perfect ending, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah. Oh, I'm very grateful to be introduced to these, Eli. I'm like very, very happy that I'm kind of annoyed that I just didn't have this in my childhood. It was like it's really lovely. And I know if I was a kid, I would really, really, really be into this.
It's never too late for Wallace and Gromit, and watching it a full probably 25 years since I started watching these shorts, they still hold up and reveal new things to me.
I have this like whole sidebar that I want to talk about, which is like, I guess how much claymation is happening right now. Like when we think about it.
In the
Like, not that
world?
much, right? Just in general, like I think a lot of claymation is happening for like smaller projects, but like not for like a full feature, or even full shorts, because like it's just so time intensive compared to any other kind of animation, like the other stop motion that's happening with Leica and all that, and that's still kind of happening. And I think has been a slight uptick in stop motion animation. But what do you guys think?
I think stop motion has made its way to the more art house corners of the cinema world. I'm thinking of The Wolf House from maybe 2021, which is a Chilean
Yeah. Didn't you talk about this in a year-end?
I believe I did. It comments on the Pinochet dictatorship in the 80s in Chile and is an entirely different application of stop motion. There's also, of course, one of my other favorites, Mad God.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's Aardman itself, which I think has gotten more perhaps pat and mainstream. Like, I am curious about what Vengeance Most Foul is going to be like. But I think it's still out there, and the really interesting stuff is happening in those unseen corners.
Yeah. I think even these 3 shorts are like pretty scrappy in the way that they're being made. Right?
They are, and they all won Oscars.
Yeah.
Wow.
A Grand Day Out won a BAFTA, and that same year, Park's other animated short called Creature Comforts won an Oscar. But then I believe both Wrong Trousers and Close Shave won Oscars.
I think the nice thing about claymation about these shorts is that you can see those fingerprints and that there's that rougher nature. Like sometimes some of the animations are not as smooth as they can be because obviously shit's difficult, but in a way they have a certain charm. And I think maybe even Were Rabbit's like kind of polished in a way that makes it feel less scrappy in a nice way where it feels almost too smooth. And that's why I kind of make the comparison to Leica, which is that I feel like the Leica stuff, like I don't really like the Leica stuff, but I think as they've kind of worked on it, they've made things more and more polished until the point that I'm like, at this point, this is a 3D animation.
Agreed.
You know,
Agreed.
like
why digitally erase the fingerprints? I will never forgive them for that.
And you know how they do faces in a Leica? It's like they 3D print faces that they just replace the head of. And that just sounds like animation on the computer with more steps, you know?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, then you're just basically printing out your frames and just flipping the paper. That's kind of what
because they're all designed on the computer already. So
I find that that's not as interesting. And I mean, there's still some charm in the stop motion, but it becomes less interesting because like there's less problems you're solving because you solve the entire problem with a computer, which is what 2D animation is. Sorry, computer animation is. And I'm like, wait a minute. It really loses that kind of how do you do this with objects kind of feeling.
Yeah.
Did anyone see the Del Toro's Pinocchio 2 years ago? That was stop motion, right?
I heard that was great.
Actually, that one, the animation's not bad. But I still think pretty slick because Netflix money,
too
right?
slick, yeah.
But definitely some moments which are like kind of nice. Yeah. I mean, I didn't particularly like the whole thing, but it's interesting. And it's about Nazis, by the way.
By the way.
Is it really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's in Italy, right? It's like a Mussolini fascist kind of milieu.
Oh, damn.
Cool. Okay. Well, I want to watch that.
It's interesting.
Not because I'm pro-fascist.
I mean, it's the most interesting thing he does. Like, it's like, why does he do Pinocchio? It's because he wanted to twist it. Yeah. And set it in this time, right? Which is, I think, when it was written. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Damn.
Del Toro's best stuff, in my opinion, and I know we're fully going tangent here, is when he is thinking about fascism. So there you go.
Do it more. Do it more.
Do
more fascism.
More? Wait, what? if I do fascism, I'm helping Del Toro's career.
No. I'm not an authoritarian. I'm a cinephile.
I'm a muse. Anyway.
Well, on our next episode, we'll talk about another Nick Park movie, TBD, I believe. I actually don't know which one we're covering next.
I think it has to be Curse of the Were Rabbit.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you know what? Let's. That movie's so good.
Yeah, I'm excited.
And I think that the comparison between the shorts and this one is interesting.
True.
Yay.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Deep Cut. Please rate and review because that helps us keep making the show and helps others discover the show as well. Be sure to subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts so you'll know when our next episode drops. Keep up with Deep Cut on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Letterboxd at Deep Cut Pod, and on TikTok at deepcutpod_film. You can also join us to talk about movies on our Discord server. We now also have a Patreon. If you want to subscribe for free and get exclusive content, Or if you want to support the creation of the show financially, we'd deeply appreciate it. Click the link in our description or go to deepcutpod.com to find our Patreon, Discord, and all the other socials that we've mentioned here. Thank you to our Deep Cut level Patreon supporter, Leah Lai. Shout out, Leah. Deep Cut is hosted and produced by us, Wilson Lai, Benjamin Yap, and Eli Sands, and our cover art is designed by Justina Yam. Our theme song is composed by me, Eli Sands.
I'm Wilson.
I'm Ben.
I'm Eli. Take care, and we're looking forward to talking about more movies with you next time. Cheese!